In Bayonetta 3, the Umbran Tears of Blood return once again as hidden stage collectibles, which will unlock bonus stages known as Phenomenal Remnants. Completing all these stages will ultimately bag you a range of unlockables, from witch hearts and moon pearls to accessories, and even new weapons complete with unique infernal demon summons. However, before you can access any of these, you'll not only need to chase down crows, but also cats and toads this time around, for a total of 3 per chapter, some even with small puzzles accompanying them. Although you can bypass some of these puzzles with sheer speed alone, I'll be going over the easiest ways I've found to catch each and every one of them, so you'll be able to collect every last one with next to no hassle. Now, it goes without saying that there will be plenty of spoilers ahead, as I'll be going through each chapter, so now's the time to leave if you want a blind, spoiler-free experience. Also, stick around till the end, as I'll be going over the specific rewards for each individual chapter, so if you want to skip tiers for a chapter and get right to the unlockable that you want, you'll be able to decide. Now before we start, a quick heads up, some recommendations I have is that I believe you should have the Afterburner Kick upgrade, or at least your desired weapons equivalent, and classic guns through having Bayonetta 1 or 2 save data if possible, as it will make things much easier. But without further ado, let's get to the tier hunting. Starting things off in Chapter 1, the Tokyo Shibuya area is where you'll find your first tier. If you go to the left instead of continuing down the normal forward path, you will come across a broken down building alongside a flashing red light which will reveal the cat tier. Upon chasing the cat, you'll notice that it runs in a very basic circuit pattern, but if you cut the corner as you try and grab the cat, you will be able to nab your first tier. After your shopping centre battle in verse 9, or the scramble crosswalk being the closest checkpoint, continue down this path until you get to a gap where you have to jump over to continue to the next section. If you stop and draw your attention to the right at Not Starbucks, you'll notice another toad sitting on the sign. Jump up, grab it, and that's your second tier down. The final tier can be found near the Gates of Hell checkpoint after your first sewer battle. After the battle, you'll notice this giant drop in the ground, and what you want to do is equip the G-pillar in order to propel yourself over to the other side. It might take a few tries, but after you propel yourself just right, you can intercept the crow's flight path and nab your final tier. The first tier is actually quite close to the start of Chapter 2, because the closest checkpoint is just the Chapter 2 start, as you guys can see there. What you want to do is run to the right, as opposed to the normal straight path. Unfortunately, you cannot escape the battle, so you'll have to fight your way through, but eventually you'll come up to this small circular structure with the first crow tier on the top. Now you can chase the crow down and use the G-pillar in order to capture it, but this is can be a little bit tricky at times, so what I do is chase it from the other side, wait for it to respawn, and then intercept its flight path just like that, in which you can capture it even using Color My World. Very simple stuff. Next up, the cat is also very close. As you can see, it's in the exact same area, but with the closed off path. What you want to do is just destroy these vehicles. I like to just summon the demons and it clears it up straight away. But with the clear path, you'll easily be able to grab the cat. Now finally, you'll have to go to the Wandering Beastmen checkpoint, which is really near the end of the stage after the giant spider chase. I won't give too much away. But what you want to do is go to the left instead of going down the middle to trigger the cutscene. You want to go to the left to the rocky area, and you hear a little bit of croaking, so you know that you're getting close. Don't get lost like I did on my first playthrough here, but if you don't go to the end and you turn around, then you will notice that this rock sticking up has the toad right on top of it. So grab your final toad for all of Chapter 2. Chapter 3's tier is also relatively close to the start of the stage. If you make your way down this pathway as normal, then you can eventually come across a building which you can scale and find the crow right at the top there. Once again, use the G-pillar and you can intercept its flight path. It'll be a bit tricky once again, but keep on trying and you will eventually get it. Next up is the toad. So if you progress down this path, then go to the right side, you'll notice a little bit of croaking on this dead end, and if you look up, you will see the toad in your sights, and that's the second tier down. Now moving on to the third and final tier of this chapter, you will have to go to the Temple Gates checkpoint, or that's at least the closest checkpoint, and you will start a bit further up, but you can turn around and get this cat. Anyway, Going down and seeing that cat there, the cat will dart between the buildings, and guys, let's be honest, we have to put an end to this madness quickly. So step on the top of that broken billboard, shut off that entrance, and the cat will run out to the start. From there, you can corner the cat with nowhere to run and nowhere to hide. The third tier will be yours to claim. Moving on to Chapter 4, aka Worlds Apart. You will now have access to the Ignis Yo-Yo, which is arguably one of the best movement options in the game, so I definitely recommend sticking with it for this level. But after moving past that breaking bridge, look up and you'll see a flagpole. If you traverse the side of that building to the left, you'll find those platforms you can climb up, and just follow the crow right off the top, and then you should be able to web swing over to it. Next up for the second tier, Heroes Square checkpoint is going to be the closest area to it. Now, once you continue forward, you'll notice on the right side you'll see this shrine sticking off to the distance. Follow that pathway, climb to the top, and you'll eventually find this platform with a ladder on it. Destroy the objects on top of the ladder, and then chase the cat around, because it does a basic circle. It'll just keep going around if there's no ladder. But once you knock the ladder down, the cat will scale up the ladder, and from there it will be cornered, and you can easily grab it for your second tier of the chapter. Finally, going back to the main path, you want to continue around the normal, or straight up the normal route that you would take to continue the level. But once you get to this little gateway here, which is the one that was in distance before, you want to go behind the wall, and on the other side of it, you'll see the toad just chilling in the back. But anyway, grab the toad, interrupt its singing session, and grab your final tier. Now moving on to Chapter 5, aka Hot Pursuit, and Viola's very first chapter. Try not to get too confused with the controls and mash the dodge button. But jokes aside, even though she's not as agile as Bayonetta, she can still move around quite easily. So, as you saw after that first battle, you want to travel to the right and scale that structure, the roof of that structure that you guys saw before, and that will allow you to grab your first Toad tier of the chapter. Now going back, I did this all in one take because they're just so close. You'll find that there is also a cat to the right, and again you can also, I just showed it through a different perspective, but you can go for the cat first if you really want to. But as you can see, the cat will jump down that little barrier and up and down, so not too bad. But if you use an afterburner kick down those stairs, it won't take too much effort to get the cat, and you can meet it before it even gets to the ground. If you don't have afterburner kick, by the way, you might just want to run and cut it through the corners. Anyway, near the end of the verse, and I believe this one is the Sightless Tower, you'll find a crow there, which will spawn. Pretty much it's very hard to miss, so just keep going and you will eventually find it. Much like with the other verses, chase it backwards instead, jump onto the roof, and the crow will be yours. Now moving on to Chapter 6, and this is back to Bayonetta in Off the Rails. Starting in the first part of the act, if you go right to the right instead of going down the usual path, you'll find this water wheel, or magma wheel in this case, I guess, I don't really know. But either way, if you move to the end there, you'll find your first tier of this chapter. Now the cat will run all across this structure, the walkway, and again it will run on top of the lava wheel as well. So what you want to do is, and again you can also run on that water wheel at the top as well. So what you want to do is chase it to the top of the wheel, and then you can either jump at the top and grab it, or you can miss just like me and end up catching it as it jumps down. But either way, shouldn't be too much effort, and the cat will be yours. Moving on, we have the next one, which I believe is around the Ape, or the Requiem Tower even, that's the closest checkpoint. But once you break down the tower, use it as a bridge to cross. Keep going down as normal, but then go to the right and come to this side path, basically. Again, you saw that secret fight there. But I kind of took the most wide angle possible to get to this point. But either way, once you go around to that structure, you can see the crow flies there. Try and scare it from that direction, and it will fly around the tower. That way you can just wait, jump up, and grab the crow to make it your second to last tier of the chapter. Finally, after the chase, which I believe is around the Ape Temple elevator checkpoint, which I believe is the closest one, you will have to have a quick battle there. Fortunately, again, that battle is inescapable, so you want to just continue forward, kind of like I was showing you with the camera just a second ago. And this one, again, is one of the more ones on the normal path, but still can be quite easy to miss just because of its camouflage. But anyway, climb onto the rocks like so, and grab your toad for the final tier of the chapter. Upon reaching Chapter 7 with Viola, you'll start to realise just how open world some of these stages can get, especially around the desert region. But what you need to do is go to the third checkpoint known as Cheshire's Oasis, right after the point where Cheshire digs up the water. So backtracking, you want to go to the left of the area that you entered with Cheshire, and eventually you'll go down this narrow pathway where you'll face a mini-boss. Skipping through the mini-boss, it's quite a linear path, so keep on running and you'll eventually get to the cliff edge. From there, you'll see the crow take off as soon as you enter the area, and then you can take your leap of faith and grab the next crow. Now there is quite a bit to do in that area, but unfortunately for us there aren't any tiers, so what you want to do is follow the mission marker back until you get to this area with all of the sand waterfalls. So running behind the sand waterfalls, hugging against the wall, you'll come up against a pile of rocks, and again you'll hear croaking of the toad. So take a look around and you'll soon find the next toad for the second tier of the chapter. Finally, moving on from the waterfall, you want to try and get to the center of the map. Again, I'm trying to show longer clips because again this just gets so open. But jump on these rocks, of course they'll sink, so you got to kind of move fast, keep on moving, and eventually you'll see the cat right in the middle of the ruins there. Also, there will be a ton of sand snakes and other enemies around, so you kind of want to take them out before you go on the wild chase, but luckily this cat doesn't offer up too much resistance, as you'll be able to snag them quite quickly once you get to the end of the pillars. So there we go, that's all of the tiers for this chapter. Next up, Chapter 8. Alright, so Chapter 8, you're back in control of Bayonetta again, and you'll want to go to the right of this starting point here. Unfortunately for us, you can't quite avoid that boss battle, so you'll have to fight through the boss battle, and then you'll get to this waterfall section with a ton of frogs and toads. However, the toad that you're looking for is right behind the waterfall in classic gaming fashion. If a waterfall exists, there will be an item behind it. But there you can grab your first one. Next, follow the mission marker as normal to this bridge section, very hard to miss. As I said, although there are a ton of other goodies, the tiers are what we're after here. So you can see the shop there. Once you see the shop, go to the right section and look down below the bridge. There you'll see the crow, and I do think the G pillar is pretty good at catching the crow. However, I think the yo-yo is just as good, as you can very quickly scale the wall here and then beat the crow to the race and just intercept its flight path once you get to the top. So pretty simple. And finally, the last tier of this chapter, which I think is probably the most challenging to find, or the easiest one to miss. I know I certainly did the first time around, but once you finish this section where you have to summon the demon to sing and make it rain, you want to traverse the top of these platforms here, or the top of these pillars. And again, you'll notice that there are flat sections on top of the pillar where you can stand firmly. But not on this side. If you swing to the other side, or whatever summon you're using, you'll see the red flashing light there, and that is of course one of the cats on the edge of the pillar. So jump across pillars, and the cat will also jump as well. Got quite the jump there, but if you jump up and use the afterburner kick, the cat doesn't run around too much, so you can grab your final tier. Chapter 9 continues the theme of open world desert themed stages, and much like in the previous chapter, you want to take a right turn right in the beginning in order to get to the first tier. Now you'll eventually come up against a waterfall, and with this waterfall you'll hear a ton of croaking, but what you want to do is look in the bushes to exactly where I'm going, and you will pick up your first toad. So not too difficult, but a little bit off the pathway. Next up, we have the crow tier near the temple entrance checkpoint. Instead of going through the door after finishing the puzzle, you'll want to climb up the frame instead and get to the higher section of that structure. From there, you'll see the crow, which I have to admit is probably one of the trickiest to capture just because of the strong wind, making it difficult to navigate. But what I do is startle the crow and then make my way across the room using the spider with the webs and so on. Wait for it to go into the center of the room and circle, and then from there, I should be able to grab the tier. A little bit tricky, but I will say that there is a much easier method, and this is what I was mentioning in the beginning, having the classic guns. So if you have the Scarborough Fair or Love is Blue, you can actually just transform using Crow Within, and the fact is that the crow actually moves quicker than the crow tier that you're chasing. So in other words, you'll be able to very quickly and easily capture most of the crows, and it kind of is similar throughout the entire game. But either way, that's just the second method, and there you go. And for the final tier of the chapter, you'll be entering the fittingly named Room of Weights, which again is the same as the checkpoint name. And what you'll need to do is put weights on the scales in order to balance it out and open a new pathway. However, if you put all of the weights on one side, you can essentially block off this path for the cat, which is waiting just outside that entrance part. But unfortunately for the poor cat, it won't be able to make the jump, and it will be cornered, and of course you can grab your well-earned tier. For chapter 10, you'll be right back in Viola's shoes again. The first thing you need to do is continue down the pathway as normal, but then make a sharp left turn. From there you'll be able to see a cliffside edge there, and you're just about to be able to see the crow in the distance flashing red. Run towards the pillars further to the left, and you should be able to intercept its flight path by jumping up and collecting your next tier. The final two tiers in chapter 10 can be found around the Paris area, which is also known as Checkpoint 3, Road to the Ark. What you need to do is run to the end of the road, turn to the right, and you will see a cat sitting on the wall of a set of stairs going down to an underground area. If you somehow happen to miss the cat, like I did, of course, just for demonstration purposes, you can run across the road and the cat will run back and pop back up again on the other side. From there, you can use the afterburner kick as the cat is going down the stairs, and you should be able to bag your last cat. Now going back to the road again, if you turn to the left, once you get down the edge of the road instead of to the right, you'll come to a gated off area and a bit of a dead end. However, if you look closely, you'll find a garage door which is pretty badly damaged. If you use a charge attack and hit it a few times, then you can break down the wall and get your final tier of the chapter. In chapter 11, the first tier can be found pretty close to the start of the stage after the first mini-boss fight. You'll notice that you need to go down to that underground area, but ignore that for now and go to the right side of the street. From here, if you start moving back, and don't get too distracted by the collectibles like myself, but once you start moving back down the street, you'll notice that there's a crow in the background. Again, the crow will fly back, right back to the area that you started in before you got to the mini-boss fight, but just race it down the road with the speed and you will eventually capture it without too much hassle. To obtain the second tier for chapter 11, you'll need to continue to the underground area, the one that I previously said to ignore, so be sure to go down this pathway this time. Once you land down there, you'll notice that you're shrouded in complete darkness, so you'll need to use your newly obtained Infernal Demon, which name I will not try to pronounce, but you'll need to use it to illuminate the area by using the formation attack with R. After illuminating the area, you can continue down the path as normal, but before the path goes all the way up, you want to stop and listen for a little bit of croaking from the toad. It is pretty well tucked in there, so you want to jump around the back. You might want to illuminate the area again just to be sure, just to make sure you're not left in darkness once again. But jumping through the back, then you can approach the toad and it will be yours to claim. The final tier of chapter 11 can be found after you leave the tunnels, and that's closest to the exit from darkness checkpoint. Instead of going towards the shop, you want to do a complete 180 and turn around to find this secret street. Upon looking up at the side of the building, you'll find the cat on top of some of these covers, so you want to jump up there and follow that cat. To be honest, the way to solve this puzzle is really just jump on as many of those covers as possible to close them down so the cat has fewer spaces to jump on, but if you keep on jumping, you will collect the cat anyway. All three tiers in chapter 12 are quite close to the start of the stage, so you won't need to travel too far. But after this first enemy encounter, you want to turn to the right to find this pathway tucked between the two buildings, almost hidden. But if you continue down this path, you will find the road to your first crow tier. So there is a hidden encounter, but you can avoid that for now. But if you look up at that rock pointing out of the ground, you'll see that the crow will fly in a circular pattern. Jump up to this building, because it will go into the window, and you'll be able to intercept its flight path and claim your first tier. Next up, going back to the path from that hidden pathway, if you look down at this part where the ground is cracked, then you'll be able to see a few platforms where you can cling on. Using the spider, of course, as always, is always my recommended opinion, but taking a look around the wreckage here, you'll find your second tier. Finally, going back onto the main pathway, you'll notice that your objective is to the right. However, what you want to do this time is go to the left instead, to the dead end, and you'll come across this area that has a lot of wreckage. Well, first of all, you see the cat, but once you approach the cat, it will run straight into the wreckage. So I definitely recommend destroying everything, just absolutely demolishing all of the vehicles there. And yeah, you can even get a quick bewitchment award there for doing that, so all good. But with no vehicles in your way, you can finally catch the cat. It will be darting in between the wreckage, but using Afterburner Kick should be able to allow you to get to the cat quickly and grab your final tier of the chapter. And finally, for the last set of tiers on chapter 13, you can find them right near the beginning of the stage in the guinea pig gap. I won't even try to pronounce that one, but they're very close to each other, much like in the previous chapter, so you won't have to travel very far. First up will be the cat. Once you get past the first section of crumbling platforms, look to the left and you'll see the cat running around on those floating platforms to the left. Now, I don't believe there's any type of puzzle to get the cat quicker this time, so you just have to use sheer speed. Again, corner the cat and then use the Afterburner Kick as it's going down, and you should be able to bag it quite quickly. To find the toad, you'll need to stay in the same area and look for the largest glowing stalagmite around. Again, it's only a few steps away from the cat, but if you go to the back of it, go towards the croakin, you will eventually find that toad. And finally, going to the crow, can be found along the normal pathway. After the second set of crumbling rocks, you'll need to climb this spiral rock formation, and at the top you'll see the crow flying away just as you get there. So again, I don't think there's any trick to this one, just scare the crow in the normal direction and chase it down using the spider. From there you should be able to grab it right out of the air, and from there, congratulations, that will be your final tier of the chapters. So you've finally collected all the tiers, or maybe you've just skipped to this section because you want to see what treasures are available in each chapter. Well, don't worry. In this section I'll be covering exactly what you need to do next alongside each of the treasures in each chapter. So, of course, reward spoilers up ahead, but if you're fine with that, let's get right to it. So for every 3 tiers collected, a bonus stage known as a Phenomenal Remnant will appear next to the normal chapter, marked as a red diamond. These are usually quite straightforward tasks, such as collecting 5 chess pieces within a time limit or defeating a boss, but regardless of your rank, as long as you defeat it, then you will be given your reward. Completing chapter 1's Phenomenal Remnant will net to you the Pulley's Butterfly accessory, which returns from the previous Bayonetta games and functions in a very similar manner. When you hold down punch and kick, it will summon butterflies, and these will absorb hits for you. Again, perfect to use if you aren't too confident in using either Bayonetta's dodge or Viola's block. Either way, pretty helpful. Completing the second bonus stage will net you a full witch heart, which you can use to upgrade Bayonetta or Viola's maximum health. Completing the third bonus stage will net you a personal favourite of mine, the Bayonetta 2 classic Alruna, alongside the demon summon Alron. The fourth stage will get you a broken moon pearl, and of course you'll need another one of these in order to extend your magic meter. Completing stage 5 will give you a fully formed moon pearl, so you can upgrade your magic immediately. Completing chapter 6 will give you access to the Star of Dinatar accessory, and this accessory, much like in the previous games, will allow you to regain health every time you taunt the enemy. Again, good for getting a little bit of health back, but of course just be prepared for some very, very ticked off enemies. Chapter 7 will give you another full moon pearl. Chapter 8 will give you a full witch heart. The Infernal Communicator returns as a reward for Chapter 9, and much like in the previous games, you'll be able to summon the Little Devils, which will help extend your combos and attack enemies as well. This can be done by holding down the punch and kick button. The Evil Harvest Rosary accessory will be your reward for completing Chapter 10. This time around it's in the form of an earring instead of normal beads. However, it does function in a very similar manner, in which when you do dodges, you will drop a bead which will explode and cause damage to the enemies. Unfortunately, this disables witch time, so if you're looking for witch time when dodging, that won't be a thing as long as you've got these equipped. Chapter 11 will give you a witch heart. Chapter 12 will also give you a witch heart once again. Completing Chapter 13 will reward you with the Earring of Time accessory. Much like its bracelet counterpart in the previous games, it will affect the way that you use witch time. However, it has been changed this time around with one massive change, and that being that witch time can't be activated with the press of a button. This time around it will only extend your witch time duration, so bit of a nerf, but I guess it's still useful in a way. And finally for Chapter 14, although there aren't any Umbran tiers to collect in this stage, once you finish the game, a Phenomenal Remnant stage will appear alongside it, which will reward you with a CD, alongside the brand new weapon known as Cassiopeia and the Kraken Demon Summons. And that about wraps up the guide for today. As always, thanks a ton for watching, and I hope this guide helped you out in some way, shape or form. If it did, then please be sure to leave a like and subscribe, because if Platinum decides to release some more DLC with Umbran tiers, well, all I say is you guys know where to come. Anyway, thanks a ton. As I said, there are additional unlockables as well, such as the CDs, the 3D boxes and so on, so if you would like me to make another guide, then again, feel free to leave any comments down below. Hope you all enjoy your playthrough of Bayonetta 3 with your newly acquired power-ups, and until next time, peace.